So I wake up this morning, it's blue skies. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous today. And yet that atmospheric river is going to hit us.
Is coming in.
Oh, it's coming in. But we had one the other day that I sent to you. And so when you woke up this morning, you not even like right now, it's snowing.
Yes, it's snowing. We're supposed to get up to 15 inches today, and there's about 3 or 4 out there right now.
So tell me, is 15 inches seems like a lot of snow, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like 32 degrees, so it's this really wet, heavy snow. So that's actually the hardest snow to clear, and it has the most moisture in it. If we get 15, if it's like 10 degrees, then we get snow. It's real fluffy and light. It's still a lot, but it's like this kind of snow probably has 5 to 10 times the amount of moisture in it that lighter snow would have.
Which is why you have your own bobcat. He's Dewey Freeman. He's got a bobcat. I'm Mark Sylvester. I have cats, and we're the elder council.
We have a cat too, but
you do.
And
you do.
And actually, he's doing pretty good. He's been a little sick, but he's doing good right now.
Good. You know, I've been thinking about this relationship that we have as sons and as fathers, and in my case as grandfather. Right now, that has moved. You know, my son's gone, my dad's gone, but my grandkids are here, and so that relationship is now all about my grandsons, which is really my life's journey anyway. That's a separate show. But in thinking about that, because I think about it a lot, it's a lot. When I see dysfunction, it just rips me apart. I probably overreact internally. I don't, say stuff, but I just think when I see someone who's either mistreating or not treating or not paying attention to their kids or their spouse, the worst thing is walking into a restaurant and everybody's on their damn phone. And I just want to go, and not that I don't do that, but it's like we don't have that much time to have this time sitting across from one another, sharing a meal, and you can turn the phone off for 45 minutes. But anyway, back to kids. When I hear stories of abuse, or I hear stories of just all the negative stuff, but then there's all the people who are kind of that overprotective part. I see, and it's on my mind, Doc.
Talk a little bit about what you mean by overprotective. And the reason I'm asking is what my guess is even between you and I, and just for the audience, we have not defined this between Mark and myself. What my guess is if there are 100 people, and you said, what's the definition of overprotective? Everyone would have a little bit different perspective.
I think overprotective is, there's a bunch of stereotypes of that. Hey, put on your coat, you're going to be cold. Hey, look, it's fine outside. It's just hey, stop, leave me alone. Let me go live my life. You're smothering me. That would be a good comment. You're smothering me. But the ones who, overprotective is, it just shows up in so many different ways. I think one of them, because I live in a very privileged community, is the parents who think that giving the kid everything, the best school, the best clothes, the car, the blah, 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 like they're giving them everything, and that's what they're giving them. But then they're never home. The parents are never home when the nanny drops them off at school and picks them up, and they barely see the parents, so they don't have a loving relationship. And they think they're protecting them, right? They really do. So I'm just really concerned about that. I think because we talk about relationships so much and connection, that there's an opportunity to have a really positive, strong relationship with your dad, with your son, your daughter, and your grandkids that I don't know that we've been presented with that option. Like you could have this is the kind of relationship you could have with these people in your life. Rather, I'm the dad and I have to, keep them in line, or I'm the son and I have to be obedient, or I'm the grandfather and I have to be doting. Like those are three definitions that maybe society, or maybe those are stories I've been told, and the people who are listening go, no, I don't have that vibe at all. To your point of if we ask 100, you're going to get 100. So this is just one man's view.
No, I think you're on to something here, Mark. There is a lot of, people who've listened to me on podcasts, on our show, uh, almost any place. And I even did it. Kimberly and I went up to Steamboat Springs over this last weekend for a 3-day getaway for her birthday. Had a fabulous time. And then one of my former students teaches at Colorado Mountain College there. And she had asked if I'd come in and do 1 hour and 15-minute lecture on attachment and development. One of the pieces in attachment, this is what I was referring to if you've listened to much of me, is for us to truly attach and truly be able to form trust in a relationship, we have to be able to go through a tough time and come out okay. Now, you can take almost any attachment theory in the world and it boils down to that. And by a tough time and come out okay, I'm not talking about horrific abuse. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. I'm talking about together with another person struggling with something. And it might be a struggle between the two people, or it might just be a struggle that maybe, for instance, both you and I might be engaged in together. Like if we're trying to do something, or if we're trying to put something together, or those kinds of things. When someone never has to struggle, they don't develop deep relationships.
There it is.
They don't develop trust. They don't develop trust in another. They don't develop trust in themselves. And part of what helps us grow is going through some level of pain and figuring out how to get through it. Interestingly enough, and I've been doing, as some of you may know, at the end of February and the first couple of days of March, I'm doing a class on how to work therapeutically with men, if you're either a therapist or coach, and been doing huge amounts of research on it. One of the things I came across, and this was from Andrew Huberman, is he was talking about this around some epigenetic stuff, but it was even cold plunges. There is something about the cold itself that's helpful, but the biggest piece that creates dopamine, which is that chemical in our body that creates happiness and satisfaction, et cetera, doesn't come from the cold, but it comes from the pain of being in the cold for a period of time. So if any of you have done cold plunges, or like I don't do cold plunges because it's so cold here, but I do spend a lot of time in the cold, and purposely. And I actually have done some cold plunges, but like the first 30 seconds to a minute in a cold plunge is incredibly freaking painful. People go, "Oh my God." It's not just a cold, but it's that pain that our body goes through that actually and the relief of that pain that actually creates the dopamine release. Same way with, um, if with a friend or with a partner, you go through a tough time and you have a conflict and you can go through that and repair that repair is bonding. That repair actually creates dopamine. Same way with father sons. And if in parenting, if we overprotect our children to the point to where they don't ever have to go through anything difficult and they don't have to go through pain, they're never going to learn how to do that. And it actually does not create a child who has the strength to get through tough times, who has the fortitude to push through what they need to push through, all of those kinds of things. And I could go on and on, but that idea of having to go through some pain and coming out okay is a pretty big deal.
As I'm listening to you, this was explained to me as how people bond, and then I see the word bond and attachment are derivative of the same. They're the same idea.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and there were all these different ways. I remember seeing the circle. I can't recall all of it right now, but these were all the different ways that people would bond. But one of them was they called it crisis bonding. And it's you go through a crisis together. And he said, like soldiers who are the deal. And to your exact point, it's two people who go through something tough together and they come out the other side, and that is a bond that those two will have for their whole life. That's just how that is, right? And yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. And then I'll stick to
And so I learned that when I was in my 20s. So I've kind of always thought about that. But when you bring up this notion of the absence of that has a deleterious effect in that you don't know how to go through that, and life is going to throw that stuff at you. Park that for just a second, because as you know, I'm half of storytelling school, and we teach people how to take life experiences and turn them into a very short story, a 5 sentence story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the key of the 5 S's, they all have their importance, but there's one that if it's not there, you don't have a story, and that's struggle.
Right.
If there's no struggle in the story, it's just a list of, oh, I was here and then this happened and then, yeah, whatever.
That's
There's
like a
not,
chronology.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a list of facts. And whereas if there's struggle, and so every movie has a struggle, every book has a struggle, so that I have a desire that our hero has something they want to do. There are obstacles that they have to get through those obstacles and struggle through them. They get through them. They learned something about themselves internally, or they were taught something on how to get through a thing, and then they go back. This is the hero's journey, right? So, but we do it in this 5. So what's interesting is you saying that by overprotecting and keeping struggle out, like this is a struggle-free existence for you, young Skywalker,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think I'm doing the right thing. Like, who wouldn't want that? Like this is good mom, good dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no struggle, so there's no story for this kid.
Yes. So let me talk about 2 or 3 things with that. We do need to go through a really tough time at times and repeatedly go through that. When we go through that and we don't have support going through it,
Mm,
oftentimes it creates trauma.
mm,
Not because of the struggle, but because of the lack of support.
mm,
So,
mm-hmm.
so one end of sort of this spectrum or continuum is we never have to go through any struggle. We're always overprotected. The other end is no protection. And so that's a huge thing that creates trauma. So part of what we're really trying to do is find someplace sort of in the middle where
Mm, mm.
we have relationship and struggle. Um, Part of what you alluded to was uh, when two people go through trauma, they do bond, but if all they experience between each other or even together is trauma, that's what is called a trauma bond.
Oh,
What's interesting about that is if it was truly heavy duty traumatic, part of what happens is that they're not able to connect to anybody until they go back into the trauma. So there's not only the part of going into the struggle, there's also the part of coming out okay.
right, right,
We
right, right,
have to
right,
come
right.
out okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and if we if so what we want to teach and learn is that if we go into something that's tough and there's support, we come out okay. Whether it's conflict
Whatever.
with your
Yeah,
partner, whether
yeah.
it's a tough job, whether it's those kind of things. Um, so we need to be careful about saying, well, you can go through a traumatic event. Well, what's interesting, if we go through a traumatic event, we don't have support. That's actually what creates a trauma. We go
Mm.
through what would be considered traumatic event. We have relationship support. It's not considered, most of the time, it's not a trauma. Um, so we need to have some balance in that. It's what we've talked about many times. It's a truly relational process that we are really looking at.
So one of the things I absolutely love about these conversations is you looking at the world and this our topic through one lens, and I'm a completely different lens. And
Hmm.
I learn from listening to you what's really going on over in this thing I'm looking at. Example, I think it's very traumatic for people on Tuesday nights to come to Carpinteria Improv for the first time and come on our stage and be a part of 15 to 18 people doing improv, improv comedy for the first time. Someone told them, someone got them to go. They got up the curve, they came in and they did it. And it's not traumatic, but they're apprehensive. This is not anything they thought they would do, but somehow the universe has got them on that stage.
Hmm.
And so we know that's tough on them. Am I good enough? Am I funny? I mean, there's all that stuff that's going on. But we start the class. Literally, the first thing we do is Kimberly creates a safe space and we have each other's back and we go through an exercise. And she actually, for the last year or so, has someone who's been to class already explain to everybody what got your back is,
Hmm.
and which is great. And the whole idea is we are going to do stuff that's uncomfortable. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to not get it right. But guess what? We all have each other's back. And that's at the core of what we do. And we walk around and we lightly touch on the shoulder and we look in the eyes and say, I've got your back. And that had in reflection from the new kids will say that I knew I was going to be protected. To your point, I mean, I knew that it was could be tough, but it was okay because someone had my back. So it's interesting how even a thing like improv comedy has deep underpinnings around connection and relationship that you're talking about.
Yeah, you're like nailing it. Let me talk a little bit about that because I actually have been to that class
Yeah, you have.
and I have also done some other improv stuff with you and Kimberly. I want to paint two scenarios. One scenario would be people coming in. Actually, three scenarios. One would be people coming in and no one really makes contact with them. That really sets up a negative vibe. The other, which is actually the most traumatic, would be people coming in. And my memory is the class was it like an hour and a half ish, something like that.
Hours, yeah.
And in the beginning, being told that we got your back, you can make mistakes, this is learning, et cetera, et cetera. That's essentially the message you give. And then going through and you're doing an exercise, the participant's doing an exercise, and they get themselves stuck. If when they get themselves stuck, someone doesn't really get their back, that's what's the most traumatic. It's like saying, I got your back, and then you don't. The scenario that's actually really growth producing is I got your back, and then throughout the 2 hours, having your back be gotten. And I've experienced that with you guys. It's like, and even it wasn't a carpinteria, but it was another situation where I was given a situation to improv with, and I was speechless. I could not, I was like, what? And I was given some time to sort of sit with it and try. But then I got a tremendous amount of support. And I got support in shifting it some. And that's what that's what I mean by having a hard time and coming out okay. Not only being told that you got your back, but really over a period of time, having that play out in truth and in real life. What was really interesting to me is like 20 minutes later, I thought of the perfect response, which it was like, okay, well, I got the perfect response. I was a little delayed, but it was like so much fun to get that too. So the whole idea of being told that I got your back, and then the consistency of that is such a big deal. And I want to give one other example here. My Kimberly and I, we do couples intensives. Couple came in, interestingly enough, they're both therapists. On their way up here, they got into a fight with each other. Ended up stopping the car, and the guy gets out and really frustrated and ends up calling his wife a bitch. And it's like, that was like, I have never even used that word with Kimberly, like ever, no matter what. I've never used that word and never will. But that whole idea of like, I love you, I think you're the most wonderful person in the world, I'm sleeping with you, I see you naked, I see you in all the best and worst parts of your life, and then having something like that come in, it so undermines everything. And so even when we go through a hard time, like I could see that this particular person had a reason to be frustrated, of being frustrated to the point to where you're harmful to someone, and then you come back around and go, oh, well, I sort of didn't mean it. That's a really big deal. So whether it's a relational piece between
back up just a second. So there's two ways he says you're a bitch. He says, oh, I didn't mean that. Like that to me that feels insincere. Are you seeing there's a way to come back out of that?
Well, there's two pieces. One is what I was saying is I understood why this person was frustrated.
Right.
So he could have gotten out and gone, I am so fucking frustrated, I don't know what to do.
Right.
That's extremely repairable. Extremely. It's like, okay, well, let's figure out what to do. When we do lose it like that, coming in and just saying, "Oh, I'm sorry," is not enough. One of the things we did with this couple, and we didn't do it immediately, we had to take time through the 2 days we were with them, is to make the commitment actually to not do that again. It's like, not only am I heartbroken that I went there, but I also will make the commitment to not do it again. And there's a number sort of rules that we have around relationships with people that we suggest it, but it's also the same thing with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
we will lose it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any parent. I don't know anybody in any relationship. I don't know anybody in any friendship that hasn't lost it somewhere, somehow. But when we lose it, if we can literally come back, if we can learn to lose it, talking about ourselves versus talking about the other person, that's what helps us get through stuff.
I'm reminded of, it just seems like in the last several weeks, I reacted out of frustration here at home over something. I forget what it was. And that's so rare around here that it felt big. It probably wasn't. I don't even remember what it was, but it felt like, ooh, like a one of those.
Yes.
And when I was out shopping, because I cook, as everyone knows, I saw a beautiful, a bunch of freesias, which I did not expect to see in the winter. It's just beautiful. And I said, those are going home. And I went home, and I didn't want to be the stereotype. Here's some flowers, honey, and I just said, hey, I made a really bad choice in how I reacted. And I could tell that you didn't feel good. I didn't feel good. I won't make that choice again. And I hope you can just accept my apology, because I sincerely did not want to react that way. That was just a bad on me. And it was received in the way I had hoped. And then it was over, right? It was gone. It was over.
Yes.
And so, to your point, for those who are listening to think we don't ever fuck up, we fuck up regularly. But
Well,
I think we also have the tools, and we've learned by we teach what we do, and we do what we teach.
yes. So one of the yes, and I have no doubt. I don't know what you got frustrated about or exactly how you responded. What I do know is, even in your frustration, you didn't make it personal. You weren't saying to anybody, "You're a horrible person," or "I
Oh yeah,
think you're,"
no, yeah,
or "I
no,
think you're a piece of shit,"
yeah,
or "I'm
no.
leaving," or any of those things. I mean, we can set ourselves up to allow ourselves to be frustrated and have repair. We can set ourselves up to be frustrated and dig ourselves deeper by things like name calling, or
Yeah.
making something overly personal, threatening to leave, all of those things. Like Kimberly and I, a couple 3 days ago, we got into a little thing, and it was like, oh. And what's interesting about that, I mean, part of what's interesting about it for me is we do so well that when something relatively small comes up, it feels really big.
That was exactly it. We
And
we we do so well that when there's just a little thing,
yeah,
it's yeah.
yeah. So
My friend, I hope that people who are listening will take this week to kind of be more intentional around letting letting the young ones fly a little bit. There's a reason birds push a young one out of the nest. That's right.
Yeah, yes. Can I give one example,
Please.
like going right with you're talking about? A number of years ago, I was working with a couple. They had triplets, interestingly enough, which I can't imagine people having triplets. It's got to be unbelievably overwhelming and wonderful. I mean, I'm not
Purple to
being
love.
negative. Yeah. There was a huge conflict in the relationship because one of the parents did not want the kids to go in the backyard and play in the grass and the dirt. So that parent was way overprotective. And the other parent was going, I played in the grass and the dirt all my childhood. And the metaphor is when we play in the grass and when we eat dirt as little kids and we're rolling around and, we come in and have mud all over our faces. Those kinds of things develop our immune system. Those kinds of things help us be healthy later. And that's the same way with all experiences of letting yourself get a little bit dirty and letting yourself be messy and letting yourself not know what to do. Those are the kinds of things that actually help us later. The sort of guidelines or rules that I would suggest in a relationship have to do with make it about what's happening. Don't make it about something personal with the other person.
I heard recently, and I think this is what you're saying, which is hate the game, not the player.
Yes, exactly.
I was when you said the one parent says go roll in the dirt and the other parent says don't go in the dirt. And isn't that what happened with COVID? Everybody was inside and we were protecting ourselves from this virus. Everybody, let's protect ourselves, protect, which was absolutely the right thing to do. Met a guy yesterday, triple vaxxed, got hit, and it just crushed him. This is a powerful, dangerous thing. A unintended consequence, though, was that kids didn't have the normal exposure to just germs in life, and they came out of it and got sick for all kinds of different reasons that wasn't COVID. And so you need that constant interaction, which made me think that what we've been talking about is this social. We're inoculating ourselves against social relationships, right? So we need to have the bad relationship to know the good relationship. We have to have the dirt in our lives so we can come through on the other side of that. And it's the social aspect. So because you said I'd have to go back to the tape, but it was about it was that's what made me think about a bug, about a vaccine, about a virus. Yeah. And the same thing happens in our relationships, to your point.
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, I love you, my friend. This is such a great conversation.
Yeah, I love you. This is fantastic on this soon to be rainy there, snowy right now.
Love you, man.
Love you.